The CCWD and SAM Joint Recycled Water Committee meeting. Today is May 16th and roll call. I would request the members to please announce their names so that gets recorded. We start with Bruce.
Bruce Russell from Ocean Colony Partners.
Ken Coverdell, Midcoastside County Water District.
Mary Rogren, Coastside County Water District.
Beverly Marshall from Sewer Authority Midcoastside.
Rick Lohman, Sewer Authority Midcoastside / Granada Community Services District.
Kishan Prativadi from SAM.
Glenn Reynolds from Coastside County Water District.
Scott Boyd, Sam, and Montero Water and Sanitary District.
Debbie Ruddock from City of Half Moon Bay.
Bill Huber, Montero Water and Sanitary District.
And Clemens Heltmeyer, Montero Water and Sanitary District.
Okay, if we move on to the next public comments. I don't see any public, no comments. So we move on to the next, which is old business. Approve minutes of March 21st, 2016 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So the minutes have been approved as it is with no correction.
Well, we have to make a vote.
Hearing no objection.
Hearing no.
I take
Hearing no
There you go.
objection, sorry.
I didn't hear it.
Okay. Okay, we can move on to the next one, which is SAM status update.
So, the, as you remember from our last discussion, we were sending out the project, as Sam recognizes it, to the member agencies for their consideration of recognizing it and approving it for an actual SAM project, and that's because of the language that's in the JPA. And we were waiting to hear back from the member agencies. We have since heard back from all three of the member agencies. The Granada Community Services District did approve it. The Montero Water and Sanitary District approved it, contingent upon it being approved by all three of the member agencies. And then we've heard back the end of April from the City of Half Moon Bay. The City Council did not approve it as a project yet. They had some questions and concerns that they felt needed to be addressed before they could approve funding the project. And I received a letter from the City of Half Moon Bay outlining what those questions and concerns were that they felt needed to be addressed before the council could move forward. And I have copies of that. I'm going to pass those around here. I should have plenty. Pass them this way as well. And this letter was also provided to the SAM board. So for the SAM board members, you've already seen this. And the direction from the SAM board was for Kishan and I to meet with the member agency managers, specifically the City of Half Moon Bay, but also the other member agency managers, so that everybody could hear the questions and answers and sort of try to see if we could answer a lot of these questions and address their concerns so that it could go back to the City of Half Moon Bay Council for consideration. And so some of the questions, Kishan is preparing I guess a presentation to the member agency managers this Friday, correct?
This Friday.
So that we can try and resolve some of the questions, to see from specifically the city manager if it answers the questions as she understood them from the city council, and then to determine if it's sufficient to be able to take it back to the city council. And we do think that there might be some things that we might have to get from CCWD, but tonight, if any of those questions can be answered by the CCWD that are here, that would be great. If not, then we would submit whatever issues are still outstanding after our meeting on Friday to CCWD for their official response. So that's where we are as far as SAM with regards to actually approving this as a project and moving forward with the 25% design.
Since I missed that SAM meeting, it was my understanding that some of these questions were going to be rolled into the 25% design study.
Potentially, that's
That's still
part,
possible?
that is still possible. That's part of what we want to have the discussion with the member agency managers on Friday, so that Kishin can present all of the information. Some of them are in various iterations of analysis that have been completed, and so Kishin's gonna put that together and see if we can answer a lot of these questions. Sometimes because they're in different pieces and parts, and they're not just in one analysis or report, people may not be aware that some of these questions may have already been answered. So we want to try and pull all of that together and then see where we are at that point. And hopefully, if there is anything outstanding, we can provide the kind of information so that Half Moon Bay City Council can still move forward with the project and just have some clarification about what has to be answered in that 25% design. Deborah, did I?
Yes, I think you framed that appropriately.
Okay.
And I just want to clarify that, Half Moon Bay really wants to see this project through, but we want to protect our ratepayers. We want to make sure that we understand as much as possible all the costs that are going to be involved. So not just SAMs, not just the cities and the member agencies, but CCWDs and OCPs, We want to minimize surprises, later on, and spend our money wisely. So answer the questions and proceed with as much knowledge as we can.
Who will actually write the business plan? Who will author that?
Well, we think all these questions are trying to elicit information that together sort of form a business plan. We did at the subsequent SAM meeting, subsequent to the city council meeting, agree that if we can get some of these answered up front, potentially some answered by the consultant, that we would be satisfied.
Okay.
So
But
what I'm confused about is and I realize you weren't here, I don't know if you guys were watching the video, but the reason we're working on a design is because your first question, the initial capital cost for SAM recycling plant. So we already talked to the consultants, we got a range of numbers. And this committee felt that that wasn't satisfactory for us to make a solid plan on. And the committee agreed that refining that design so that we actually were talking, and there's a plethora of consultants who will cheerfully take our money to give us ranges and scenarios, but it was this committee's conclusion that those weren't, they were worth what we paid the consultants. They weren't worth going to the bank on.
right,
And so that's why we chose to move ahead and actually have a 25% design. So it's a teeny bit frustrating to have the city then come back and say, well, we want hard numbers up front. And it's like, that's why we're figuring out what 25% will cost. So
well, I
we're
think
not just
the
looking
general manager framed the issue for us, and that is, we want to see this information in one package. So we may have information about the top item, which is initial capital cost, but we want to see that together with the rest of the costs and the rest of the information that will be hopefully answered with all of the questions. So let's get it all on the same page so that we can agree on the size and the shape of the elephant.
So who's going to put all that together? Are you?
Well, Kishin's gonna put together what we
Kishin's gonna do
have.
it?
And we hope that all of the information that we have so far will answer the majority of these questions. Either the information that staff has already put together, the information that CCWD has already put together, the information that the consultants have put together, that when we put it together to answer these questions, that we'll be able to answer them satisfactorily so that the city manager for Half Moon Bay feels comfortable taking it back to city council for their further consideration.
And
So do we have a
it-
timeline for that? Like what are the
Well,
sort of dates?
The meeting is Friday, where they're going to get together and pool some of this existing information. That information will be brought back to us at our regular meeting, I'm
Yes.
assuming. And then we can, make a plan to move forward.
Mm.
What do we need to fold into the 25% design, for instance? So,
Cool.
we do have independent concerns, but I have to say that we have been a little bit concerned by what sounded to us like reticence on CCWG's part. At our last recycled water committee meeting, Dave Dixon didn't seem to be, you know, embracing it with the same zest that some others of us might. He raised issues about maybe too much time has passed, we need to look at maybe new technologies, maybe we need to look at potable reuse. You know, so we've been a little bit uncomfortable with what we perceive to be, you know, some hesitancy on the part of your district. So that's why we wanted to put the information together and get, you know, sign off by Sam, but also CCWD that they're willing to go forward with this.
Well, I think that what you're hearing from the general manager is that without the 25% planning and a report from the consultant, it's difficult to analyze. So, you know, it's kind of like the blind person, you know, going in to feel around the elephant to try to figure out what kind of animal it is, but the animal isn't really very well identified. So I think that's what you're hearing.
So he wants the 25% design, so do we, but, you know, we have our own issues and needs, and that's why we want to see this information
Yeah,
pulled together.
I don't have
so we
a
can
problem
take
with
a
the
look at it.
questions, I was just trying to get a
Yeah.
time frame.
Yeah. But we don't want to delay, so.
Cool.
Yeah, but as far as timeline is concerned, with the meeting on Friday, I will be able to answer as much questions as possible to the best extent. And then Half Moon Bay city manager would be able to take it to the city council next month.
Okay.
Probably. So if it goes in favor next month, then we would be able to take it to the SAM board again in the next month. So it will be the third week of June when we take it to our SAM board meeting.
Okay.
So that's the
It
approximate
would be
time.
good if we could get some resolution at the first city council meeting in June,
Correct.
because we'll be losing at least one member for vacation and possibly two, as I understand it, so. It'd be nice if this meeting on Friday, if everyone just sort of dug in and.
We're hopeful that we will, but obviously Sam isn't in control of whether or not the answers satisfy the city manager sufficiently to have them be willing to put it back on the agenda for the first meeting in June. Certainly that will be our goal.
I have two questions from this language. There's a sentence on the second page that says, the motion also included a provision that the consulting firm that is selected for development of the business plan should be different than the consulting firm doing the design. So I take it from this discussion that if the questions get answered by SAM and CCWD in a manner that is deemed appropriate, that a consulting firm won't be hired to do a business plan?
I think that's an accurate assessment.
Is that inaccurate? I see. So the first step here is how good are your answers? And if we think they're, you know, technically accurate and sound, then we might not have to hire a consultant. Is that the idea?
Yes.
Then there's a second sentence here, and I understand the words are not necessarily susceptible to precise definition, but if the recycle business plan confirms that the proposed project is technically and financially viable, as confirmed through the agreements provided by CCWD, what are those agreements? Or is that answers to the questions?
We haven't even drafted a contract yet.
Do you know what agreements that was referencing?
Well, I think it's back to the principles of agreement, which are very general.
I got the impression it was,
That they're gonna get
maybe
paid
it was,
enough to cover all
it was a
this?
term of art imperfectly, unintentionally applied to the earlier the previous paragraph of the written confirmation from CCWD. I think it makes a lot of sense in that context, and so that's how I was reading it.
Yeah, I
So
think
agreements
that's-
didn't mean.
No, not
No.
agreements, it was just like if CCWD looks at it and says, yeah, this makes sense, then we could move on. That's my,
Oh, I see.
does that make sense?
This is
I
addressing
don't wanna speak
the
for everybody.
No, I think
concern
you're right.
over some of David's comments that, ooh, we're not sure it's really viable. You want some confirmation from CCWD that they agree that these are the right numbers and that it's viable. Do I have that right?
So it's basically, are we on the same page about the numbers, all the numbers, all the parties, you know, the annual?
I said I had two questions,
Oh,
but I
sorry.
actually have a third. There's some things in here that, having attended these meetings for the last year and having attended in 2008 and 2009, there's some things, some technical questions here that I assume Sam will answer that I have not heard raised before. Issues like the rental cost to Sam for use of the aeration basin, clarifiers, things like that. I've not heard or seen numbers applied to those things in the past.
I'd like to comment on that too.
Yeah.
Neither have I, and
Yeah.
it's not my intention to try to recover costs for infrastructure that we have already in place. I do think it's interesting to think about, all right, suppose we do find a need to use one of those things for treatment purposes. I think that's a fair question to ask. We should be ready to answer that question. But I'm not, yeah, I for one, the cost for the building of what's already in the ground here, that's sunk cost. I'm not looking to recover.
Yeah, because I've never seen anybody ask, reference these kinds of things.
Like, for example, we could go crazy with this and, try to load, all the costs of everything leading into the plant onto this thing too. And it's like, no. All this stuff is here, it's ours. We want to put it to, improved and increased use. So I, for one, am not interested in recovering any kind of rental on existing. I do think we probably ought to think a little bit about, okay, what do we do if it turns out we need it? But I think we kind of already know some of the answers, which would be we would develop more storage. Which, I mean, you can look around the plant facility and see there's enough ground here that we could dig something out, or we could put something above ground with tanks, or there's a bunch of things we could do.
And then I guess the final thing is, looking at these questions, there's only really one question directed at us. And that is, I guess, the last one. Plan to recover costs if identified recycled water customer OCP decides to utilize potable water sources in lieu of recycled water. I assume we're entering into a long-term legally binding contract.
Yeah, we've kind of covered that.
And that we would provide security, a letter of credit or something, and unless you defaulted or couldn't produce the water, or there was a series of long-term defaults after curing and things like that, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not
Where
gonna.
would you get it?
Well, I'm not getting potable water, I turned the wells back on.
No, that's been
But I
covered.
couldn't afford your potable water,
Of course.
100 million
Well,
gallons a year,
so
I don't think
this is
that's.
one of the easiest points to address in the business plan, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna be legally obligated to buy the water as long as it's provided and meets the criteria.
I think that was just a page filler.
I don't-
There was
One line
with the
short,
bottom,
and,
yeah.
But it's the only
On the
question
run-up
I can
door.
clarify. I don't think we're gonna have the option.
No
to
reticence
just-
here.
Well, I assume that we weren't gonna have the option after you spent all this money to say, oh, we changed our mind.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
we
that's-
covered that 4
Yeah, a
meetings
long
ago.
time ago.
That was already covered.
So it sounds like, does staff
Review
have
the
any
video
concern
tape
about,
would be helpful.
I mean, do you feel like you're gonna be able to come up with something for each of these points?
Yes, I believe we'll be able to respond to each one of those questions. And although it's a plan meeting with the member agencies managers, it's on Friday at 10 o'clock, but the members of the Recycled Water Committee are welcome to come for the meeting if they wish to.
No work on time.
10 o'clock here at SAM?
On this Friday?
Yes.
And no, I didn't watch past meetings. My city council played baseball, so, sorry. Rick was the man with the institutional knowledge.
So I want to address your comment on without adding cost or risk. I can assure you there will be risk. We're putting in infrastructure, stuff blows up. There's more risk. Get out of bed in the morning, there's risk. We're expanding an infrastructure, there's risk. I can assure you there will be risk.
Nobody
Um,
expects zero risk.
Well, that's what you wrote.
It's not what I wrote. That's what our staff wrote.
Fair enough, I'll let you address that. The cost, one of the things I think that this group has been really clear is to be careful about how we voice the cost, because there's a finite amount of water for use on the coast side. And the use of recycled water has value from several angles and not necessarily just a financial dollar cost. You can work out a very careful spreadsheet to say what its supply is valued and try and transcribe that. But it's been something that we feel that we will evaluate what the cost in cash to build the equipment, the cost to run it, and weigh that against the benefits that we'll get or not get from it. And obviously, the first challenge is figuring out what it will cost to build. And our first pass at it, the numbers were too divergent. And there was a best case scenario, a worst case scenario, and the order of difference between them was too great. So this group chose to move to a better defined engineering plan to better figure out what the costs were. And I do agree that there are real risks when you look at the costs at other facilities, which is what the first consultant did. They said, well, here's 10 projects, here's the range from almost free to very expensive. That's your numbers. And we said, okay, now we have a range. We know that it isn't going to be for free. That one already had a recycled water for another purpose, and they just said, okay, now we'll use it for this. So it really was free. The high-end one, we felt had extenuating circumstances that made it very expensive. But it did raise the specter that we could be more than we wanted to. But rather than stop and just say, okay, maybe it's going to be really expensive, let's figure out a number. And so that's what we're in the process of doing, is figuring that out. But I don't think at this point in time we're making any commitment on how much it costs, because until we've looked at what the budget is, then we can start evaluating whether that's a fair value.
But having said that, the CCWD came in with an estimate for the getting across the creek, the pumping costs that was, based on your engineer's estimates, was more favorable than what we had thought.
It was 1.2 million, is that right?
Yeah, give or take. And the last kind of more refined facility budget was pretty manageable as well. You're right, the early ones were a range, but I actually thought that short of any kind of getting to a more defined facility design, that the numbers were well within a range that would be covered by what we can pay. I mean, the last numbers we produced, assuming those numbers were accurate.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, I mean, I remember the CCW estimate and the last estimates that you produced for the facility, particularly if we don't immediately use the RO, and if we, limit some of the production to a lower amount, we were
Very favorable.
doing pretty well,
Yeah.
I mean, number-wise.
Yeah.
I think there were some discussions over passing on lost profit and some other kind of vague discussions that are gonna have to be discussed.
And I would counter on the lost profit, the notion of the savings of not having to develop additional water supplies.
Yeah, well, that would be my view, and,
We don't make a profit at CCWD. Our business is not profitable.
no,
Well, maybe we should
I
use
use
I'd
profit.
like
in
to
it.
clarify that for you right away.
I use
We're not
profit.
a not-profit
The
organization.
loss of recovery of G&A.
Right.
Thank you,
Right.
that's a little
Different.
bit,
Right.
yeah, good five.
Oh, but to be offset by, the savings of 15 million gallons of
Which
potable
made a
water.
profit.
And the other thing is, I think, when you're talking about risk versus value, I think there is a long-term issue we've discussed about the ability to continue to discharge effluent into the ocean. I mean, that's very hard to put a number on that risk and what that value is to get rid of 600,000 to 800,000 gallons during the peak season that don't have to discharge into the ocean.
I don't think it's that hard for us to, back of the envelope, put something on that.
Figure out how else you would deal with it, maybe.
Well, I mean, all we need for this is a notion of, okay, how would we divert the water so we're not going through the outfall? And look at the expected lifetime of that thing, look at that annual maintenance, and start thinking about, okay, the cost to replace that, or just dealing with the depreciation on it. If we were fully funding the depreciation of that thing, we'd already be saving money. And then could be looking at, well, instead of that, could we do an alternative, like subsurface injection or something? All we need is one good idea about what that would be, funded by the depreciation capture on this, and then we know what that cost is. I don't think it's that big a deal to do, especially if you let yourself think in a 10 or 20 year time frame, because the state's not gonna come and order today all the sewer agencies to change to do zero discharge in 1 year, or 2, or 5, because we were talking about massive infrastructure, and if you do that, then everybody's going to go into the state saying, okay, but you gotta pay for it.
Right.
And they can't do that, so they're gonna be on 10, 20-year timelines, providing incentives and encouragements, and they'll shepherd us all that way. So our time frame should be commensurate with that. So I've been thinking about this for 10 years, about, okay, how do we deal with this outfall, and how do we use not having to replace it as a way to fund something better. So for us, I think Sam is not gonna have a problem acknowledging that kind of benefit and thinking about how we fund that. In the same way, when you don't have to develop additional water sources because you have this flexibility from having this supply, and the same kind of flexibility for you. Glenn, if I might, I think we agreed to go ahead and put the money up for the 25%, but like Bruce, I'm confident in the numbers that we have right now. We've done many projects with far less information. And so I think Sam agreeing to do this, or at least, let me speak for Montero, because I pitched it at the Montero meeting to get our approval for this. If this helps us get this thing done, fine. This work that I'm convinced we're gonna have to do anyway, fine. So we're fronting money. We're taking on more risk because nobody's offered to pay us back if this thing doesn't go through. And I think Half Moon Bay's in a fine position to say, look, $90,000 bucks, that's real money. You know, we wanna, can't not notice that, right? So, but I think many of us were ready to proceed, and CCWD's response last time, we decided, look, if you want to be nervous Nellies about it, fine, we'll go ahead and step up. What we can't have is all of us being nervous Nellies about this. So, Montero, Granada, we're saying, let's do something. Bruce is saying, let's do something. What's it going to take to get us all doing something? This is why I want to focus on, do you need anything else from us to make the Friday meeting successful?
I've got all the information that I need to address for the.
I'm sure you do. We'll get through this.
Yeah.
Perfect, so we'll get a report on Friday afternoon, how the meeting went, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
If I could do a general comment on process here again.
Great, have a great night.
In general, the process, as everybody probably knows from project management, the longer a project takes, the less chance you have of success. This step, which I had hoped would go quickly, but for obvious reasons it didn't, is going to end up taking about 5 months to get this project, this purchase order out. In the future, I don't think we're going to have the luxury to do serial steps. You know, we can't wait until the 25% report comes back before we start doing anything else, because that's going to take a month or two. And then, so what I would like to propose is the next step we had agreed to would be writing the formal contracts between OCB and CCWD and CCWD and SAM. I would hope that we could start those as soon as possible. You know, you're going to have to fill in some numbers at the end, but I wouldn't want to wait on that process until the 25% report comes back with the final numbers, because then it'll be another 3 months.
But we're already waiting. We agreed.
Well, that's what I mean.
Well, we agreed to the 25% a couple months ago. Where is it? So we're waiting. So we don't.
I'm on your side.
We don't wait either.
Yeah, but if
Get
we
on with
can
it.
envision steps
Do
that
it.
we can start packing them in parallel,
We get a draft contract, all of our lawyers look at it the day it arrives.
I'd like to see that. And also, if anybody has any other questions as they come up, please get them to everybody. Don't wait till the meeting. Shoot them out an email or something, so we don't, because every time, you know, we as boards have to take stuff back to our boards, and every round's another month or two. So if we can try to envision questions and problems up front as best we can and get the answers before it becomes back on the critical path again, we can save some, time on the total project time to get this moving as fast as we possibly can, that's all.
Well, for example.
I heartily agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting on a $50,000 engineering proposal to dredge our ponds. I've already got the proposal from BKF engineers, civil engineers, and I'm, for them to design it. I've already talked to people that would do the dredging, and I have a pretty good sense of what the permitting would be. And I was ready to have them start to do the drawings as soon as you got the funding for the 25%.
Yep.
I mean, at that point, as soon as you say, okay, we're gonna go ahead and start doing the design, we'll cut loose the engineers to deal with the design for the dredging. And biologists and other people that are gonna have to look at it. But I just was waiting for
Sure.
somebody to say,
So,
okay, we're
Me
ready to
too.
start.
Question for Keishan, did you end up meeting with the State Water Board on?
That's my
yes.
next,
Okay.
to give you an update on the, if we can move on to the next, give you an update. Yeah, just to let you all know, we had started this process with the State Water Resource Control Board in the month of October. We had filed an application, it was general application for financial assistance. And a project manager was allotted for SAM by the state board. And that called for a kickoff meeting on April 6th at Sacramento. I went there personally, and Mr. Lohman was also there by phone.
Acting and talking.
So the Division of Financial Assistance, which is called the DFA, they explained to us the procedure for moving forward. And we started off basically giving them a brief about the SAM's recycled water project. So the people who were participated in the meeting was basically the chief, which is Dan Newton. He's manager for the water recycling funding program. He heads the entire department there. And David Balgovin was the financing project manager who was assigned for SAM's application. Then we had an environmental person, which was Ahmed, and a finance person, which was J.T. Marshall. So the process, as they explained to us was the first step is the applicant's responsibility, which is to complete the financial assistance application. And this application package consists of a general package, financial, technical, and environmental. Now all these could be submitted either at the same time, one at a time, or it could be submitted together. You don't have to wait till the entire package gets completed. But it would make more sense to submit all of it together so that they can review it quickly and get back to us. Then the next step is, once all this is submitted, then it's the division's responsibility. The Division of Financial Assistance adds the project to the project list, reviews the project scope, budget, and timeline. And they've assured us that their turnover period is going to be very, very less, and they have staff, and this is their priority. They said that they can turn around these applications within less than 4 weeks time. And after the application is reviewed, then it's again the responsibility of the division to give to prepare the financing agreement, which is basically an initial draft agreement, and they also mentioned that the reimbursement for soft costs is also possible at this stage. So all project direct soft costs which are incurred prior to the agreement are also eligible. So they advised us that we should keep track of all the soft costs, like for example this 25% design cost. Although we are doing it far ahead, much before the various applications are being prepared, they said please keep track of all your time and costs. You can still get reimbursed for that. And one remark they made was that we will not be able to get a financial assistance facilities grant application for SAM because it was already awarded to us a couple of years back. So they said since it was awarded about 3 years back, they said you will not be eligible to get the grants again. That's the facilities planning grant. And then the final budget, which is the responsibility of the applicant, After the engineering is completed, then we go out for a bid and select the construction contractor, and then we submit the final budget approval package, which should be given to the state board. And then we go on to the application review. The board would again, the division would again review the final budget approval package, and then prepare the final agreement, which adjusts basically the estimated construction value to match the applicant's construction contract value, which was mentioned, which was an estimate earlier, and this is the final value. So after the amended contract is executed, the applicant may request reimbursement for construction costs. So it's at this stage, once the contractor has been selected, we can request for reimbursement of the construction costs. Then the applicant's responsibility is to identify the construction completion date. The first repayment is exactly 1 year after the construction completion date. So it's up to the applicant to indicate as to when the construction will be completed, and then the clock starts from there for the repayment of the loan. The applicant's responsibility is also to submit the final project completion report, and if required, the applicant will be required to submit reports, the annual reports to the DFA as stated in the financial agreement. Just to give us an idea, they mentioned that the present interest rate is 1.7%. And they said it changes only twice a year. It was 1.652 or something earlier. They said, and it just changed the week before our meeting, it was 1.7%. So this is the gist of it, and the interest rate will obviously be will be fixed at the time of the agreement being signed. When the agreement gets executed at that particular time, whatever is the interest rate would be applicable to us. So this is in short the process, and we had a good meeting. We established good rapport with all of them, and if you would like to pitch in.
Yeah, I just want to say two quick things. One, I thought Kishan did an amazing job getting this organized and going up there and kind of leading this whole discussion. The second thing was, I was pleasantly stunned and surprised. I almost got the feeling these folks were stumbling over themselves to try to help us. I mean, there wasn't any government bureaucracy, there wasn't, we'll get around to it. It's, hey, you do this, then we're gonna do this, and we're gonna get this done, and faster you can get stuff, we're just gonna wrap this around and get it right back to you. We got loans available. Come on, you know, we wanna help you do your part.
It's a state priority.
It was just stunning, you know, people who hate government or things moving at the speed of government, you know, they're basically waiting on us.
It's water, and we're headed for this,
So,
long-term.
As fast as we can get stuff to them, they're not gonna be the barrier. So I think that was just a great meeting, and I was
Thank
just
you very
totally
much,
impressed.
Kishan.
Yeah.
Funding is lined up, thank you. Great.
Yeah, and I can speak to exactly that, that sense of urgency, having gone through 2 projects through the SRF process, one immediately after the other. The first one was for not recycled water, and not that it was more difficult, but the feeling was definitely different when we, at my previous agency, when we turned around and submitted the subsequent application for the recycled water project. It very much felt like, how can we get this done sooner? So I thought the first process was fairly well done, and it was even easier with the second one, which, because of that recycled water component. So I would agree with that impression. There's definitely a sense of, at the state level, wanting to get anything that has to do with recycled water out and going.
Thank you, Keisha.
You're welcome. And the best part of it is they said that even if the application is for a loan, at that point of time, if grants are available, they would automatically consider for it. We don't have to file in a separate application.
And there's a lot
And
of
how long are these loans? I mean, the
You could
duration
do
of the
20
loan?
30 years, they said typically they do 30 years, but
Yeah, 20 to 30
you can ask
years.
for something different.
And they finance a certain percentage, or will they finance
The
100%?
whole thing.
100, up to 100?
Including design, right?
Including
Yeah,
design, and
including
you can
soft
retroactively
Retroactive,
capture
yeah.
back any design work that you've done and analysis that you've done for the planning process. And as far as the grants, if you do get a grant attached, the way they do it is, instead of making it cumbersome and having 2 side-by-side pools of money, one being a loan and the other one being a grant, basically the grant forgives the loan.
Wow.
So, for example, we had a $27 million project that ended up, I think, at $20 million because there were two different grants that they took advantage of. So the loan just reduced down to 20
Cool.
as opposed to two separate funding sources, which makes it administratively so much easier for the agency.
Nice.
And there's moves in Sacramento to get greenhouse gas reduction fund monies applied to recycled water as well because of the water energy nexus. They're talking about $250 million additional dollars for grants, so,
Well, the city ought to be right on that.
yeah, we're hopeful, yeah. I would like to get a copy of your presentation electronically, if that's okay.
I'll email it to all the members. That's it, so we move on to the next, which is CCWD status update. Would you like to give any updates?
Yeah, we're waiting for the 25% design. I could give you detail, but I don't have any.
Well, and I can say after the last meeting, which was in March, we met to talk about the agreements.
Term sheet?
Yeah, and we got some pieces and parts of that, and then we were gonna go off and do our parts, but then I sort of put it on hold until I waited to find out what the member agencies were in agreement on. But certainly, as soon as we get the green light on the 25%, we won't be waiting for the end of the 25% design. Dave and I had agreed that we would continue to move that agreement, legal contract language process so that it was running parallel, and hopefully they'd all sort of end at the same time and be taken into consideration at the same time.
Thank you, Beverly.
Next, OCP status update. Would you like to give any update?
I don't have anything else other than you could finance $6 million at 1.7% for a lot less than the 5.25 I offered. So it should cover plenty of G&A.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was gonna say, there's still the
Yeah,
interest.
it's right
Would
That
you like
interest
to write
rate
the
is really
answers
good.
to
It
the?
is really good.
Yeah,
Feedback?
SRF has been,
there. I just ran my quick
we've used
calculator.
SRF quite a bit. It's been very
It's
good.
really an excellent resource.
So our next meeting,
When do we have our next recycled water committee meeting?
It'd be the third Monday in, no. Yeah, it's the third Monday in, or is it the second Monday? We doing, I forget, what are we doing second?
This is the third one.
This
Third.
third Monday, so does
Third.
anybody have a calendar in front of them? I
It's
don't
the
know.
20th.
The 20th of June.
And is that after the city council meeting as well?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
After the first one, but not after the second one, obviously.
Right.
The
Well,
second
yeah.
one would be the third Tuesday,
You
so
mean-
it'd be the Monday prior to that. So if it makes it on the
Well,
June,
let's make it the fourth Monday, so the answer from the city.
well, that would be a problem because that's the SAM meeting.
So we say June 20th.
That's what I heard, June 20th, right?
Well, and the, obviously, if there's no movement, then there really isn't anything to discuss. So we could wait and see. We could plan for the 20th and then postpone it if we don't have any additional information yet, if that works. Just go ahead and plan on the 20th.
Yeah, for some reason, if it is not discussed in the half Monday, if it's not an agenda item for the first week, if it's for the second council meeting, then it would have to be,
Maybe we can do the
Pushed.
first Monday in, oh, no, that'd be
July.
4th of July, but we can pick a different date if for some reason we don't have any updates,
Yep.
if that works.
Got it on my calendar,
Okay.
okay.
7 o'clock. And it's at CCWD.
This one will be at CCWD.
Half Moon Bay still has a May meeting too, maybe they can get it all
Yeah, 20th of June.
warmed up. on
Well, the
inside.
meeting is tomorrow, so there wouldn't be an opportunity.
Well, maybe the mayor can come to the meeting.
Okay.
So June 20th at CCWD, and we hope to have some good information at that point.
Okay, let's do it.
Unless we have.
Thank you so much for
something
all your
else.
attention and
thanks.
go
All
work.
right.
Warriors.
Should have worn my yellow sweatpants.
Let's say 2 o'clock.